Lauren, did you see Garrett has Trader Joe's in his background?
Oh, I didn't until you said that.
He's highlighting the best parts of USC.
It is the best part of campus, I agree.
It really is. We got there just in
So
time. I think
convenient.
they opened it the year that we were there.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought it was open for a long time. It must be one of the newer
Maybe I'm
editions.
wrong. Was it? I think I could
No,
be.
it was newer. My roommate that graduated in 2018, they had only had it for like a short period of time while she was there for undergrad. So we got lucky.
We got lucky. Yeah, we spent so much time there.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to our spotlight session. We're going to get started in just a minute or two. We're going to let everyone have a chance to log on and join us, but welcome. We'll get started in just a few minutes. All righty. It seems like we have most of our RSVPs on our Zoom call today. Again, welcome to our MAPP Spotlight session. This is our sixth Spotlight session, our final Spotlight session of the semester. Today's event is going to be our Alumni Perspective webinar. This is the second one we're doing this semester. We had great success with our first one, and we wanted to do another one. It's one of the most common questions I get here in the MAPP program is for a chance for prospective students to meet alumni who have gone through our on-campus program, who are now working in industry and can speak about where they are in industry, their experience in the MAPP program, their experience even before the MAPP program, to when they were a prospective applicant. So we're going to keep our event today pretty casual, mainly a discussion to hear from our two alumni members today. It's before we jump in here, a few housekeeping items. Everyone's on Zoom or everyone on Zoom is muted and your cameras are off. And that's just to ensure there's the best connection during our event today. We do welcome any and all questions to our alumni, and you can ask those questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your toolbar in your Zoom window. And we will try to get to as many questions as we can. My name is Garrett, and I am the admissions counselor for the on-campus MAPP program here at USC. This is my second cycle with the MAPP program, and we're getting ready for our priority admission season here in January in the next couple weeks. So I do know a lot of students here on the call are getting their applications ready and getting a chance to meet some of our alumni. So I do welcome you. I oversee all of our admissions here for the program. So any questions about the program, I am your main contact. And I am joined with two alumni members from our class of 2019, Mel and Lauren, and I will let each of them introduce themselves. And if you'd like to say, a little bit about, to where you're from, your undergraduate school you came from and your major, and what you do currently for your role. And we'll start with you, Mel.
Okay, great. Thanks, Garrett. Hi, everyone. I'm Mel. I am originally from the East Coast, so I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I got my undergraduate degree in psychology and business at a liberal arts school right outside of Philadelphia called Villanova. I graduated undergrad in 2014, and I did a bit of traveling, the whole soul searching thing. I moved to Africa for a bit, worked in New York for a bit, and then I did the Peace Corps in the Philippines for a couple years before coming back to the States and joining MAPP back in 2018. And now I'm currently a change management consultant at a boutique consulting agency out here in West LA.
Great, thank you so much. And Lauren.
Yeah, hi everyone. So nice to kind of virtually meet everyone here. My name is Lauren Sanders. I am originally from Southern California, from a small suburb called Palos Verdes. If you're from the Southern California area, you might be familiar with it. For undergrad, I went to Dallas. I studied at Southern Methodist University. I majored in psychology, minored in economics and advertising, and I knew that I wanted to go on and get another degree to kind of further my education and how I could use psychology in the business world. So I went straight from undergrad to the MAPP program here at USC. And what I'm currently doing now, I'm an associate at KPMG. I work in our human capital management consulting practice. And specifically within that practice, I work in our workforce transformation group. So we do everything from talent development to employee experience to organizational design and job architecture. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Great. Thank you so much. I would love to hear from each of you a little bit about your journey in applying to graduate school and what that looked like for each of you and how you found the MAPP program and why you ended up choosing the MAPP program here at USC.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I graduated with degrees in psychology and business. And for anyone else who graduated with a degree in psychology, I think the next question is always kind of like, okay, now what? What are you going to do with it? You can go the clinical route. I think a lot of people in our cohort, Lauren and I were in the same cohort. A lot of people had that psych undergrad and were trying to figure out what to do next. The MAPP program, when I started searching, I was living in the Philippines, so I was just spending a lot of time doing research online. I think I literally Googled, how do I pursue business and psychology at the same time? And a bunch of different schools came up that were one or the other. And MAPP was one of the only ones that I found that really had a unique blend of the two. And one of the things that really stood out to me about the MAPP program is that it's not just organizational psychology or just consumer psychology. It really has a unique blend of both, which is very rare. And that really stood out to me. One of the process eliminations for me was that it is a 1-year intensive program, which I really enjoyed. And I like that the intimate cohort, our cohort had, I think, 30-ish people. And so going from a larger undergraduate where you didn't really know your classmates as well or your professors as well, the idea of really having a close-knit community where you're one-on-one with the professors and with your classmates really, really was a big appealing factor to me, which ended up being one of my favorite parts of it. So yeah, I found it, I applied when I was living abroad and I applied early decision or the fast admissions, and yeah, it was great news when I got in. So that was the journey of getting there.
Great.
Yeah,
And for you, Lauren.
Yeah, I think honestly, echoing a lot of what Mel said, for me, I had done a lot of research when I was an undergrad, and I was at first just majoring in psychology, and then I added on economics as well as an advertising minor. And I was starting to do a lot of research and understanding how important it is that we have people coming into the workforce that have the skill set that MAPP, gives to you and helps you develop. And so that's really what encouraged me to apply straight out of undergrad. And I'm a little biased because I've grown up a Trojan fan. I've always loved USC, being from Southern California. So when I did my research and found that there was a program at USC that was so specific to this field of psychology, and like Mel was saying, not just the organizational side of psychology, but the consumer side as well, I knew I had to apply, along with some other programs too, but I was, again, a little bit biased. And I just remember when I visited also the on-campus, the office where the program director, and Garrett, I'm sure your office is as well, I met everyone and they told me all about just the opportunities available and how kind of customizable the program was as well in terms of what your specific interests were. I just knew it would be a great fit, and I'm just so happy that I made the decision to go.
Wonderful. And Mel, it's you mentioned a little bit when you were speaking last about it's the cohort model and the 30 students and your experience with those 30 students. We do hit really hard on the cohort model that everyone starts together and finishes together. And I'd love to hear from each of you your experience with the cohort model, what that was like for students that might not have had that experience in their undergraduate studies.
Yeah, absolutely, Garrett. I think that, outside of the educational aspect of it, the cohort model, it's hard to put into words how close you get with the people that you're with. And that's just such a special experience. I think when people go to grad school, it's very intentional. It's not just a 4-year program where maybe you're not really entirely sure what you want to do. You're very specific, and you're with these like-minded people who also have that interest. And you're here for a reason. You're spending a lot of time together, so you get to know each other really well. And it's an intensive 1-year program. Emphasis on the word intensive. It gets intense and stressful, but you're with these really great like-minded people that are going through the same thing you are, and they just become your family. And they're there supportive wise, but also you just learn so much from these people. I mean, it's not easy to get into USC, so you're surrounded by 30 really bright, intelligent people, and from all different parts of life. Some are doing consumer, some are doing the more organizational side, and everyone just has these really great insights. And so you have your really knowledgeable professors, but then you also have teachers all around you. And it's just, I mean, we went to class together, but then we would also spend our free time together. And that's just how great. I don't know if our cohort was unique or what, but it was a really special experience that definitely didn't get in an undergraduate program. And I think it's really hard to find in a lot of different areas in terms of grad school. So I think MAPS really highlights that. And it's one of my favorite parts of it, definitely.
Yeah, I totally agree. I loved having a smaller cohort. I actually lived with two other girls that were in the cohort. Mel knows them well. And we just had a great time, like studying together, doing projects together, just living and breathing MAPP. It was a lot of work, but we had a lot of fun too. Exactly what Mel said. And I think having that 30-person cohort is very advantageous in, ways within the classroom as well. Like, I remember giving a presentation, by myself, and afterwards we would be able to open up the floor for feedback and ask my classmates in front of the entire class, what did I do well? What could I improve on? And in that more intimate, like safe setting, it felt, again, just safe, and everyone supported one another. And I feel like that's not something you would do in a room of maybe 100, 150 people. So, those are a few things I loved about it. Also, I think when you come out of MAPP, you instantly have 30, or I guess maybe 29 people in your network that you not just know at a surface level, but really, really well. So I can say now I have friends like Mel who works as a change management consultant. I have other friends that live, on the East Coast that work in user experience or market research or other types of consulting, or within HR, and I know them very, very well. So if I ever need to introduce someone to someone else, or make connections and expand my network further, I have those people at an arm's reach, which I think is a really, really beneficial part of the program.
Yeah, it's with the collaboration with the cohort model that MAPP has. So would you be able to share a couple of the group projects that you were involved in, any consulting that you worked on as a group together, how that looks like? I think sometimes when we speak to prospective students about it being so collaborative, it could help what that looks like with your cohort. And we'll start with you, Lauren.
Yeah, so actually, Mel and I did a couple projects together. I think one that has really helped me in my career now is a project we did for a class we took in the spring, which was the psychology of employee selection and assessment. And it was a semester-long consulting project we did for a nonprofit organization. And we were basically doing like a talent management project for them. So we were developing competencies, putting together a competency model, thinking about how this organization could improve its recruitment for a certain part of its workforce. And for me, that was like the perfect hands-on experience for me to say, okay, I loved doing this. I learned so much from this. I really think consulting might be the next step for me in my career. And going back to MAPP being very customizable, I remember also wanting to get some more leadership experience under my belt. And so our professor had the opportunity for some of us to take on project manager positions for that semester-long project. So coming out of MAPP, I could say, not only did I or was I a team member of this consulting project for a client, like a real client, but I also was able to lead my team and, develop certain leadership skills. So I think that was just one of many. I'm sure I think I know which project Mel might touch on next that we also worked together on, but that was one thing I loved about MAPP, just the hands-on experience that you get. And I think when I came out of MAPP and I was doing my interviews with KPMG and some other consulting firms, they were really impressed that in school I had done those types of projects, and that I had worked with a client before and understood just, how consulting would work. And again, too, if consulting is not your interest, you can take a million different pathways to kind of make MAPP customizable for you and what you want. For myself, it's just been the consulting route. Does that answer? I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. And for you, Mel?
Yeah, it's funny that you said that, Lauren. As you were speaking, I was like, wow, we really did work on so many different projects together. We had another consulting project in the spring where we were change management consultants for a local museum, and they were going through some, USC had acquired them, and they were going through, their docents were going through some engagement. They were just having some trouble engaging their docents and kind of integrating them into the rest of the museum. And so we did a lot of, research in terms of qualitative and quantitative to really get to know these docents and let them be the voices for change. And at the end of it, we ended up presenting to the museum our findings. And so that was our spring project. I do want to touch on a fall project, which I think is maybe could be more applicable to the masses, because this, everyone in the cohort will do. Your entire cohort is a part of it, and it's through Dr. Luke's class. It's through one of the research methods class, and they get a client. So our client specifically was Honda, and we were working on a project with them. So the client comes to the cohort and says, we have this problem, figure it out, like, please address it. So it's a big consulting project, and then your entire cohort is split up into different areas. So I know I was in secondary research. Lauren, which one were you a part of?
I just know qualitative. So
qualitative,
yeah, something. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's the qualitative and there's the quantitative. So each member of the cohort gets a different part of the assignment. And then you do different things, like you go out and we had some secret shoppers where you go out and do this ethnographic research where you go into the field and you try and get some data on the qualitative research. And then you also do quantitative where you create surveys and put it out there and try and get responses to try and come up with some answers to the questions that you've posed. And then at the end of it, the client comes back and you actually present to them in person. And so it's a wonderful experience in terms of the research, but also you have this client like Honda. We had these really important people at Honda come and we had to present our findings to them. So it's really a great experience. You do it over the course of the semester, and then you build up your presentation. And so you're working with your group, but it also only works if you all come together at the end and build it together. So there's just so many different skills, so applicable. And I think the whole term applied psychology it's so fitting. And that's one of the best things about MAPP. It's not just you're reading theory and learning, oh, this sounds nice. You're put into these situations where you're actually putting them into practice. And that's what the real world is like. And that's what the job world is like. And it's just really, it's valuable experience that I've never gotten anywhere else.
Great. Yeah, it's the consulting project. It's the first semester that everyone will have the chance to be a part of. We really try to bring a large Fortune 500 company in front of the students. So, if you have the opportunity to work with Mattel, we work with Cliff Bar, if you work with Honda, we've worked with Mattel, we work with Cliff Bar, and we really want to make sure that there's that exposure with the consulting project. So thank you for sharing more about that. So what was your experience with the faculty in the MAPP program? I'd love to hear a little bit on each of your experience with the MAPP faculty, and maybe one or two of your favorite classes, if you could choose. Mm-hmm. We'll start with you, Mel.
Okay. I just smile when you say that, because the faculty are just like, they're incredible teachers, and they're just incredible people. And sometimes when I speak to prospective students or current students, they always ask about certain classes. And I always find myself saying, oh, that's my favorite class. And they're like, you said that about every class so far. I'm like, okay, maybe I should choose some more. You can't go wrong with any of the professors. They're so invested in you as students and you as people. I know I still personally have a relationship with some of them. And they help me when I come to things during my work. And I'm like, oh, I don't really understand. I don't remember this, but I know this professor had this insight. I'm going to reach out to them. And they're open to that all the time. And they love doing that. Some of my favorite classes I took, Lauren and I took a lot of the same classes, potentially all of the same classes. So we were both.
I think we
did. My favorite class was potentially, I think the one we took with Dr. Sahibzada, which was employee assessment and selection, which is really funny that we say that, because when we first got into it, it was hard. Some people dropped it. We were just like, what, this is going to be really difficult. And it was just so, it was, I think there was 11 of us in that class. So second semester, you get to choose electives, and those are a lot more concentrated on what you're going to end up pursuing, whether it's more the consumer route or the organizational route. And it was just very applied. Like Lauren mentioned, we learned how to build competency models for organizations. We actually did a consulting project with a company, and having a class with 10 or 11 people and one professor, the hands-on experience, attention, and knowledge that you gain is just unlike anything that you can compare. And so I think that was probably my favorite class. And then I have to say, at the beginning, I loved when we were all together, our internship class that we were prepping for, I think. So we had, I don't remember who our professor was for that.
Are you talking about the pro
Dr.
seminar? Oh, the second
Dr. Nguyen,
semester.
yeah. So second semester, when we were all taking our internship, we would come together. It was short. It was maybe 1 or 2 hours a week, but we would have to go up and present. And like Lauren was saying, this is where you get to know each other so well, and you talk about your internships, and you are presenting like you're presenting to a massive audience, and you give each other feedback. I think feedback's a bit more important word than critique, but you record yourself presenting, and then you go back and watch it and you're like, where could I have improved? And that has improved my public speaking for my current position more than anything I can say. And it's just really small but intimate, valuable skills that you learn through those classes that have just really paid off down the road.
Yeah, I don't know how much more I can say. I think Mel summed it up there. The professors are awesome. I also still reach out to them if I have questions. I remember I reached out to Dr. Nguyen back when, or I don't know, I think it was in the summertime, because I had a question around diversity, equity, inclusion. And I know that, you know, he is the expert in that. Or if I have questions about anything like organizational related, I can, you know, shoot a text to Dr. Breutman. And they're so willing to help, which is awesome. They're there to talk, you know, about their classes or your interests or career and whatnot, because they all are, you know, practitioners kind of outside of MAPP as well. You know, they have their own consulting firms, or they work for other organizations, maybe part or full time. And so they bring their, you know, hands-on expertise and practice to the classroom, and they're more than willing to always just share their knowledge and be a resource, and not just when you're in MAPP, but of course, like we've been saying, once you graduate too. So that's just been awesome. And also, Mel, my favorite class too was Dr. Sahibzada's class. It was awesome. I don't know if she's still teaching with the on-campus program. I think I might have heard she's maybe with the online program now, but either way, whether you're on campus or online, I feel like you're welcome to network and get to know professors that teach on campus or online. Again, just further expanding your network. But her class was awesome. Just the semester-long project we did has helped me so much in my job right now. Literally, the project I'm on for my client, we're building a competency model. And I'm like, I did this in school and I know how to do it in my job now. And that's one of the reasons why I got picked to be on the project that I'm on, is literally because of that direct experience that I got from taking a certain class. So yeah, just echoing everything Mel said. They're great. They're great people and great professors as well.
Yeah. And I do want to add one thing onto that. Since Lauren and I both were on the organizational side, one of my favorite classes was actually on the consumer side, which was consumer psychology with Dr. Barraza. And he made it, and this is a tribute to him, he made it so difficult for me to decide I wanted to pursue organizational psychology, because he made consumer psychology so fascinating. I remember just taking notes and notes, and I still look back on them. And so even if you're going in thinking you might be leaning towards one side or the other, all the classes are so beneficial, and they really form this invaluable bridge together that a lot of different programs have one or the other, but you have both. So, and that's just really going to set you apart from other people in the job market, or just other people who maybe went to different grad school programs. So I will say that even though we are on the org side, the consumer side were some of my favorite classes as well, and so knowledgeable, and still to this day really beneficial in what we use in our day-to-day for work.
Yeah, one last thing to add to that. I think the professors do a really good job of intertwining the organizational and the consumer side, because I think they are very interconnected. Like, even though I and Mel, we technically do things that are more on the organizational side, like change management, talent development, employee experience, you still have to understand consumer psychology. Like when you're thinking about employee experience or change management, you have to think of your employees or the talent that you're trying to recruit almost as consumers. Like how do you, market your organization? How does your brand look to, people that you want to hire and retain? That's the best talent out there. So I think just last thing to say on that, they do a really good job at just intertwining everything, and just especially first semester, getting exposure to both sides of psychology is just, I think, really, really valuable.
Moral of the story, we love all of them.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
And would you say for your particular cohort that most of the students were more org focused? Were they more consumer focused? Was there a lot of switching? How did that look in your cohort with what students wanted to do from what you could remember?
Yeah.
I don't fully remember. I want to say maybe we had a few more consumer, but I think it was almost split down the middle. Does that sound right, Mel? I actually personally switched. I remember at first thinking org, and then I joined and I was in Dr. Barraza's class and learning about user experience and market research. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. It ties into my advertising background. But then I went back over to org. So I've personally kind of went back and forth. And that's really what I think first semester is for, to think about where you kind of want to go moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it was pretty evenly split between the two. And most people, I think, had an idea going in which side they were going to lean towards, but there definitely was some overlap. And again, you don't have to be very strongly one or the other. I know some people who were in more on the org classes and their elective second semester, but they were doing more of a consumer internship. So it's not like you are set to have to choose one or the other. Your electives do end up bolstering what you want to pursue in the job market, but there can be a lot of overlap too. So it's not just black and white necessarily.
Great, thank you for sharing that. We spoke a lot already about the first semester, how everyone's in the same classes. You spoke about your electives that you took in the MAPP program. I'd love to hear about each of your internship experiences. One, the process of obtaining an internship and what that looked like, and then what you did for your internship and what that looked like your second semester of the program. And we'll start with Lauren on this question.
Yeah, so let's see. I remember feeling kind of overwhelmed and stressed about finding an internship. It's something that you start doing in the fall because you want to, have it ready to go starting in, I think, January when you come back from the holiday break, when second semester kicks off. And I remember being just kind of very anxious and nervous about it. A, because the whole process is a little intimidating. And then B, I wasn't sure, being in Los Angeles, if there were going to be a ton of more org focused internships. Usually there are a lot more things in market research and whatnot. And I remember I had a lot of interviews, did a lot of research, and I randomly ended up connecting with someone on LinkedIn who had just started this boutique consulting firm. And I was like, okay, consulting, that's kind of what I'm thinking in terms of where I want to go with my career path. Maybe this would be a good internship for myself. And I was like, but it's a startup. I don't know if they'll approve that. And I remember I sent Dr. Leggett, the program director, this long email hi, I've been talking with this individual. He has this boutique consulting firm. It's based in Beverly Hills. It's, the commute isn't bad, all this stuff. And she was like, absolutely, go for it. That is absolutely approved and whatnot. So I remember feeling a sigh of relief about that. But my point is, it was, they're very, I want to flexible enough in terms of if there's something you really want to pursue and you can meet the criteria for the work you'll be doing and the amount of hours you'll be working. I think they really welcome, internships at, well-known corporations to a startup where literally it was me, the CEO, and one or two other people. So that was my experience kind of obtaining the internship. And then once I was in my role, I was technically an organizational development consultant intern. So we did a lot of working with brands that were newer and thinking about how they can, establish their mission and their vision and values as an organization, and how they can kind of align their strategy and their workforce to living that mission and those values. And so it was really interesting. I know startup versus large corporation, it's very different. And it kind of told me like this experience was great, but I want to be somewhere a little bit bigger, at least where I start my career, hence why I'm at a much larger organization now. But overall, it was a great experience. And I'm glad to, although it's stressful having classes and your internship at the same time, I think it's really valuable because you can take what you're learning in your classes and bring it to your internship as well. So that was kind of some of my experience with that.
Yeah, wow, that was a great answer. I feel like you just covered pretty much everything that needed to be covered when you were speaking. And when you're in the program, they do say it's never too soon to start looking for an internship. But that's really when Lauren was speaking, I was like, we should probably say that more and more. So it can be stressful when you are taking classes and it's like, oh, I need to get an internship for next semester. Oh, but I'll do it next week or like next month. All of a sudden next month becomes December and you're like, I'm trying to do finals and I also need to find an internship. Just start thinking about it as soon as you're there. MAPP has a great network. So they bring in speakers from all different areas and really utilize that network. If they come and speak on campus or if it's virtual, stay after, have a conversation with them. Just because a company right off the bat doesn't say they have an internship, doesn't mean they won't take on an intern. Some internships are paid, some aren't. It really depends. But if you are looking to further your professional development, people are willing to take you on and they want your help. They want to impart their knowledge on you as well. So just because a company doesn't necessarily have an internship posted doesn't mean they won't be willing to take you on. So I think that Lauren kind of touched on that is something to definitely keep in mind. MAPP does a great job of presenting you with internship opportunities. So previous cohorts, different people have done internships and they offer new internships for next semester or next year for new incoming cohorts as well. So there is a lot of legacy there. I ended up getting an internship also in OD or org development consulting at the Center for Nonprofit Management in downtown Los Angeles. And it was a last minute thing. I was really torn between, do I want to go market research one and more on the consumer side or more on the org development side? Where do I want to pursue it? So I was back and forth and I had a hard time making a decision, which ended up making it really stressful for me down the line because it was like December 20th and I was like, oh my gosh, I just got my internship. So definitely start ahead. I will say I had a similar experience to Lauren during my internship. It was great experience. I'd been in nonprofits for a lot of my life. I was in the Peace Corps and I had done some consulting work at an orphanage in Africa. And I loved the idea of that. But then when I was actually on the front line at the Center for Nonprofit Management downtown, it was just, it was great experience, great exposure. It just kind of made me realize maybe I do want to be in a different industry. So internships can be great for a lot of different reasons. It taught me a lot of different things about org development overall and those concepts. I was able to go to actual nonprofits and work with their leadership and do some strategic planning. And these are all things that I still do today. And so for that, it was really valuable. But I also think it's just as important to know what you don't want to do as what you do want to do. And internships can teach you that as well. One thing I will say about internships is there's not really a job description on your internship. So when you go into it, it's up to you to make the most of it. So do what's expected of you and then use that as your opportunity to do 10 things more and really just get as much as you can out of it. Because I think that's what's really going to help you give some clarity and put what you're learning in MAPP to actual real world use. So definitely use that as well.
Wonderful. And with your internship and doing classes, it's how did the both of you manage kind of your time, especially the second semester when it became a little bit more busy? We'll talk about Treatise in just a minute here, but how did each of you kind of manage your time for students that might join the MAPP cohort? We'll start with you, Mel.
Okay. Yeah, time management is a crucial skill here in MAPP. I mean, it's a really valuable life skill as well. When you choose your electives, they're only offered on certain days. So you have to work that out with your internship on what hours you're going to meet, what days you're going to intern. I think it just really comes down to some discipline, some self-discipline. It's like, okay, like for these 4 months, I need to really be strategic in my planning. I'm a bit of a OCD, like I map everything out on my calendar. So it's like, okay, I have 4 hours of classes today, 4 hours of internship. When am I going to do this work? And I think being proactive, if you do a couple hours of work per day, it's really not that bad. It gets bad when it's like, oh, I can do it next week. But then all of a sudden at the end of the semester, you're freaking out because you have your treatise and your, consulting project or whatever. if you just stay on top of it, utilize your classmates, utilize the professors, and take advantage of your downtime, it's really manageable. Again, easier said than done. I feel like this is a life lesson for all of us, but it was all about time management and starting that off from the bat, trying to get a feel for when you can fit the time in and when you have it, use it. And I know this is a little bit counterintuitive, and I live by this, but also don't forget to have fun in the process. Like, yes, it's 4 months of stress, but it's also 4 months of grad school, and you're learning a lot. You're going through these experiences with these people that you're never going to get this time back. So, yeah, it's stressful, but take a step back and enjoy the process, because every time I did that, it made everything seem more manageable. And then it was also a moment to reflect and be like, this is really cool. Like, we're really doing this. And so it's okay to, like, have some fun during the chaos as well. So time management, super important. Being kind to yourself and just giving yourself a little break now and then, also very important.
That's great advice. Thank you. And for you, Lauren?
Yeah, I think Mel summed it up very nicely there. I think just being proactive and developing those time management skills is something that you need to successfully go through that second semester, but they're also skills that you're going to need to develop, once you're in the workforce as well. So either way, you're going to have to figure it out at some point. And I think that second semester gives you the perfect opportunity to, like Mel was saying, figure out like, okay, I have my internship, for this part of the day, I have class for this part of the day. How do I carve out time to, do my schoolwork or do informational interviews or job search or whatever it might be. And also just how Mel was touching on kind of, being able to have fun or take a step back. I think that nowadays, especially with so much time being spent online and this kind of virtual work environment, who knows what the future holds for next fall and for the next cohort, but being able to have that work-life balance as best that as you can, I think that really contributes to, your success and your engagement in your classes and your internships and whatnot. So just being mindful of, taking care of yourself, and like Mel said, take a step back when you need to, and, you'll be productive from there.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think, our program being so short and accelerated, 9 months, it really, flies by for the students, and to really, it's also recognized that you need time for yourself and to get to know your cohort and to have fun outside of class is very important. It's before we move on to treatise, which is the other huge portion of the MAPP program. Mel, we actually had a question that came in for you specifically. A student is wondering, what was it about, or was it about your nonprofit internship that turned you off towards nonprofit org related work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will probably just preface this by saying the reason why it turned me off could be another reason why it turned people like onto it. It's very individualized to what it is that makes you tick. I love the idea of nonprofits because I'm a very mission driven person. I like the idea of working towards, the greater good, or that kind of idealized prospect. And I think I had almost just saturated that for myself. Having done that for so long, it's a cutthroat environment in a different sort of way because your resources are very limited, and you want to do a lot, but as a nonprofit you don't have a lot to go with. So it's very like the hours are long, not for my internship, but if you're going into it long term, like you really have to be committed. And I just felt like maybe at the end of the day there was something, if I work for a mission driven company that has the capital, maybe I can do more with it. Again, that's just me, and maybe I was just burnt out from nonprofits, having done so much of it. But I would say to always give it a shot and figure out what it is that works for you. I kind of wanted to be in a more younger, newer sort of environment. I had never done that before. I had always been with nonprofits or more traditional organizations. And I was like, okay, I'm getting my program here. I've never done the entrepreneurial thing. So now I'm at a boutique consulting firm where there's 4 of us. And it's very agile, very innovative, very autonomous. And you kind of make your own schedule. And I like that entrepreneurial environment where the traditional nonprofit world didn't necessarily have that for me. And again, that's a personal preference. So I think it was just learning, what do I want to do long term? Do I want to be working here, or do I maybe want to be doing something a little bit different? So yeah, that was kind of my experience. I hope that answers the question.
Great. And Yes, that did answer the question there. Thank you. And another question, we're having some other questions that are coming through, so we'll take a pause real quick and answer some of these questions. Lauren, how did you feel about the course load of the MAPP program?
Yeah, I think like we've touched on before, it definitely is intense. You know, it's a 1 year instead of 2 year master's program. So there's always a lot going on. Classes, if for people that aren't familiar, I think this is maybe standard for graduate school, are usually more in the evening or latter part of the day because your professors a lot of times have other, jobs or things they do part-time. So I think class is usually reserved for later in the day. So, it is intense. It was a lot of work, like Mel and I were saying, especially I will be, transparent. I think second semester is heavier than first, probably because you have an internship. But looking back, I mean, it was doable. We did it. I don't, no one failed. We're all, our cohort, everyone is off in the real world now doing really, really well. And I think that, like I said, it's difficult but manageable. And I think it also, as we've been saying, really does set you up for success when you do join the workforce. Because, for example, in my role right now, my main focus is like my client project, whoever I'm assigned to, that's my main focus. Client work comes first. But then again, I get involved in other things at KPMG internally, like I work on thought leadership work, or I'm also a member of our campus recruitment team, all sorts of things that I like to get involved in. And those are kind of my extracurriculars per se. So I think when I kind of compare that to MAPP, it's like I need to know how to balance, my main focus, whether that's classes or the internship, and then balance, the other schoolwork or extracurriculars that come in and out. So long story short, like I've been saying, I think, it is intense. It's a 1 year master's program versus 2, but it's doable. It keeps you busy and you'll be fine. I think if that answers the question, I hope.
It does. Thank you. I would love to move on. It's before we talk a little bit more about each of your careers and what your day-to-day looks like. Kind of round out your experience in the MAPP program with talking about Treatise and what you did for Treatise, if you did a consulting project or if you did your own research. We'll start with you, Mel, on this, if you'd like to share a little bit about that process.
Yeah, of course. So Lauren and I have a very similar experience because, so a little bit of context, second semester, you start thinking about it first semester, but second semester, you start working on your treatise, which is you pose a research question that you're going to answer more or less. And that's a very simplified version. I don't want to do it a disservice. It's a very intense program. It requires a full semester of research and you're pretty much working on it the whole time. So you're either doing an individualized treatise where you're doing your own research and you're writing your own treatise at the end of it, or you're doing a consulting project where you're put on a group and you have a client. So me and Lauren were actually with the same client. It was me, Lauren, and one other girl from our cohort. And the client comes to you with a problem and it's like a consulting project where you then spend the semester, you have a professor who's your advisor for the project. And then you work with this client throughout the course of the semester. It's very hands-on. And so you kind of go through different research methods, both qualitative and quantitative, to address the problem that they've come to you with. And you work with them and you end up presenting to them at the end with your findings and the strategy that you come up with, but you also write a treatise with this. And so Lauren and I ended up having it was actually technically a change management consulting project. And we did it with the USC Pacific Asia Museum. And I don't want to talk about all of it because it's both Lauren and I's experience. I don't know if you want me to pass it off and you want to talk about the second half of it, but we had Dr. Brightman she's more on the org side. She was our advisor for it. And she kind of acted as a liaison, but they're really, when it comes to consulting projects, it's your project. So as students of the MAPP program, it teaches you leadership. It teaches you time management. It teaches you how to interact directly with the client, which I have to say is so valuable. I personally would not have my job that I have now were it not for this consulting experience. So Lauren, if you want to talk a little bit more about exactly what we did, since we did share that project.
Yeah. I think also too, sometimes people get confused by the word treatise, but it's basically your master's thesis. I know we call it treatise here at MAPP, but I remember telling people about it sometimes and be like, what's a treatise? So basically your master's thesis. But yeah, it was something, I don't know if you mentioned, we had to apply for this particular project to be on this team. I think it must have been either late first semester or early second semester. The faculty sent out like a list of the potential treatise projects for the spring. And if there was one you were interested in, I think we had to do like a very short application, and me and Mel and another individual ended up all being on the same team. So that was kind of like our project team for the USC Pacific Asia Museum. And I think Mel touched on this earlier in the panel here, but basically the USC had acquired this museum and they were dealing with some, structural, cultural changes and whatnot. And there was a particular group of their workforce, a very important part of their workforce, which was the docents at the museum, that were having a very hard time dealing with the changes that were happening as, when USC came in and acquired them, just culturally and how things were run there operationally. They just weren't happy and they felt like their voice was not being heard. So a big part of what we did was go in there. We interviewed people. I think we did a survey as well, which we created using a specific change management model. So we used the tool called ADCAR, which moving forward too, if you want to go into change management work, that's a very well-known model / tool that is used. So it was great that we got experience, learning about that and how it's used. And it was just like a real consulting project. Like Mel and I can say doing that now as a job, like everything we did there is what we do in our roles now. So we had to come up with our project plan, hold meetings with the key stakeholders, have status meetings, make sure that the communication was flowing here and there. And so, at the end of it, we put together, of course, our deliverable, which was kind of more, I think, of a current state. This is where you're at, and moving forward, this is what you can do to help these docents better adapt to the change and whatnot as a result of USC's acquisition. So we presented it, and that was kind of it. But it was literally like a consulting project from start to finish, and it was, counted as our thesis or treatise too. So it was really great. And also writing the paper for the other component of the treatise, I think was really good too, just in terms of, really refining how our writing and, finding sources and, integrating our data into the paper, all of it, making sure that it tells a coherent story. I think that was another, just, even though it was a lot of hard work, it was a valuable thing that we had to do to, finish off the treatise and get our credit for it.
Yeah, I think it's in our previous, this is great that the both of you did a consulting treatise. In our first alumni webinar, we had one of the alumni do more of their own formulated treatise that they presented at the end. So it's very helpful to also hear of how that consulting side looked for our treatise. And you're exactly right that we call it treatise, but it's essentially identical to doing a thesis in your master's program. Before we move on, we've received several questions from students, and before we open it up to the final Q&A portion of our time today, I would love to hear, it's in your introductions, you spoke a little bit about your role and the company that you're at, but maybe provide some more detail on what your day-to-day looks like, what projects you're working on, to give students kind of an idea, especially those that are interested more on the org side, what their career could look like post-MAPP from what two of our alumni are doing. And we'll start with Mel on this one.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's interesting because Lauren and I are both technically in the consulting realm, but I'm sure our day-to-day is very different. She's at KPMG, which is a massive organization. I'm at a company called MAPP, which is, it's actually our founder came from Accenture, which is another large consulting firm. She had been there for 17 years and then she branched off and formed her own company. And it's me and 3 other people that are full W-2 employees. Then we have some contract workers as projects come in. But it's very different. I used to work at Morgan Stanley, so I have that large corporate life, and I've never had this really intimate setting where you wear a lot of hats. So I feel like this is a very consultant heavy answer, but it really depends. Our day-to-day varies so much, which is one of the things I love about it. It depends on whether I'm on a client project or I'm in between client projects. So a little bit of context for that. If you're on a client project, my company is industry agnostic. So we don't focus on any one particular industry. So for example, our previous client was in entertainment, and it was really funny to see the culture there. Our days would start around 10 a.m. as opposed to the client before, which was in healthcare. Our days would start like right at 8 a.m. So it really depends on what the client comes to. Our first project, for example, was in innovation design. It was this much more traditional organization that's been around for many years, and they wanted to become more innovative in their culture overall. And so their leadership team came to us and said, we're having a hard time doing this culture change with our people who are a lot more set in their ways. How can we become more innovative and agile and competitive in this market, having been doing something for this way for so long? And there's a lot of different things that go into that, but it includes things like leadership alignment, stakeholder analysis, different ways to gain buy-in among your stakeholders. And this is done through interviews. We've led workshops. We do design thinking workshops where you bring employees in. This is pre-COVID, but you actually sit with the executive leadership team and you do workshops and try and think of strategies and engage them directly in their plan in order to help them gain buy-in. And so there's different projects as in our consulting team that we can do. I really love that it's industry agnostic because no two projects are the same and you really just get to wear a lot of different hats. And in between projects, being at a boutique agency, you're responsible for a lot of different things, whether you're helping with back end things for other people's different projects, whether this could be, building decks for their presentations that they're going to be making, or putting together reports. Or for me personally, right now, I'm leading our business development and marketing efforts in my downtime, which is where consumer psychology also comes in as well. So our company has been around for 2.5 to 3 years, and we're rebranding right now. And my boss is like, well, you've done some of this in your grad school program, right? She's like, can you take the lead here? And I love that. So I'm going back to my old MAPP notes and trying to figure out what can make our brand stronger. What kind of market research can I do to get us more clients? And so it's really fun to, even though we went the org route, I'm going back now through my old consumer psych notes to help us build our brand. And it's really fun to kind of get a mix of both of those. I know that's a lot of roundabout information. Our consultants do a lot of different things day to day. So either you're on client project and you're working directly with them, in which case you're kind of integrated into your client. I would be more specific, but in terms of NDAs, I don't want to say any names specifically, but then, or you're more on the back end doing more company development, internal work for your business. So you really get the best of both worlds, and no 2 days are the same. Client projects run anywhere from 6 weeks to a year. So it really depends on where you're at in the current environment.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities between what you're doing, Mel, and me, which makes sense, I think, again, because it is consulting. But again, our experiences are different because of like the size of our organization, which is really cool to hear kind of what your day today is. I think for me, similar to Mel, I knew when I graduated, I wanted a job that wasn't, 9 to 5, come to my desk, sit down and do the same thing every single day. And like Mel was saying, that's definitely not the case in consulting. What's been the standard over time is, at least where I work in the Big Four, is you would usually travel on Mondays, go to wherever your client is, and fly home on Thursdays. But because of COVID, I think that's completely changed now for our industry, at least in the Big Four and other larger consulting firms. So I'm actually not sure what the future of my job is fully going to look like, because we've been working virtually since March now. But my first project at KPMG was actually change management related. It was for a couple months, but the project I'm currently on, I've been on since July, and we're going through February with our client. So I can talk a little bit about that. It's for a healthcare organization based in Seattle. So it's nice to get to work the West Coast hours since I'm out here on the West Coast. But every day really is different. I will say one thing we're doing for them is developing a new job architecture model along with a competency model for them. We're putting together business and leadership competencies. And so my manager, thinking about my goals and, what he thinks I should, get involved in, one of those things was, taking on another leadership role. So for this project, I'm kind of leading our job architecture work stream. So with that, we've been doing a lot of interviews, focus groups. Our client loves workshops. Like they love that. They always want to do them. So we've had to do some virtual workshops, which is definitely interesting rather than being in person and doing them. That's something that we're kind of navigating as we do it. But yeah, a lot of time spent in PowerPoint, thinking about how I can take the data that we've gathered and tell a story with the data. That's something I think MAPP has helped a lot with. I'll definitely credit MAPP with giving me those skills. And other than that, you know, there's just lots of client meetings, engaging with your team members. If you love to collaborate and bounce ideas off of other people, I think consulting is definitely the place for that. But I'll stop there because I could probably talk for 10 minutes about my project, but that's the gist of it. And it changes every day. Like sometimes it's more meetings, sometimes it's more collaboration with just my team, not the client. Sometimes it's myself working in PowerPoint. Sometimes it's interviews. It changes all the time.
Yeah, I think that's so helpful. You know, that the both of you have very similar aspects of your position, but to kind of hear in each of your organizations what you're doing and what that kind of looks like in your organization. So I think the both of you. We're actually running out on an hour here. I'm sure we could talk about the MAPP program for a lot longer, but I would like to get to a couple questions that were asked by some of the students that have joined us today. It's one of them, which I think is very important, is if there are one or two pieces of advice that you would give to prospective applicants who are going to be applying to our priority deadline in January. And whoever would like to go.
I have a short,
no, go ahead, Lauren.
Just a short thought on that. I know this is something I was thinking about when I was applying is I would say I think it's the personal statement or the essay component of the application, just be very specific as to just why you're applying to this program. I think grad school is an investment in your time and your money, you know, all of the above. And so I know that, or if I'm remembering correctly, unless things have changed, the kind of the word limit on the essay is not that long. So just being concise and also just executing on why you want to spend the next year in this program, whether it's, you know, pivoting career-wise or whether you know this is what you want to do, it's your dream based on what you've studied in college, whatever it is. I think just being really to the point about why you want to be a part of this program. And I think that also showcases your communication and your writing, your skills as well, which is something that is really important in MAPP and then moving forward in your career. So I think just within the essay, being specific, like why do you want to spend the next year and spend this time and this financial investment in this program?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I'd add to it also, let yourself show who you are. You know, you only have so many words, but I know it's an essay for a grad school program, but they read a lot of, like, Garrett's going to be reading some of these, like, make it fun for people to read. You know what I mean? Like, you're welcome, Garrett, in advance.
Thank you.
But don't be afraid to show a little character and, you know, be fun with it. It's your voice. And so it doesn't have to be an essay in the terms where we think of it in very like academic. It's okay to be fun and also be professional at the same time. So find a way to let your true colors show and make it unique, stand out, because there's a lot of people writing in letters. So find something that's going to set you apart.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think especially the personal statement, it's so short, 750 words. It's more of a cover letter than, you know, a long 5-page essay that some programs are needing. So really, you know, as long as our questions are answered, really adding your flair, I think that really can help you stand out, as it is a very competitive program and we want to make sure, you know, we're creating a great cohort for the fall. One of our last questions, and we'll end it here. We have one more question that came in from a student. We don't require work experience from the program, but did each of you have a lot of work experience before applying to MAPP that was relevant? We have a student that is asking about her work experience, if not having a lot is okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Lauren and I have a little bit different experiences. Lauren came straight from undergrad into the grad school program, which I think is actually the majority of our cohort did that. I was one of the few who had taken a few years between undergraduate and it. So I had more technical work experience in that regard. It doesn't matter, you know, one way or the other. I think it's just a matter of being intentional in what you want out of the program and why you're coming to the program. So I had done some traveling, some consulting work in Africa, and then I had been doing some finance work at Morgan Stanley and then some volunteer work. So I had that variety of experience going into the program. I won't say it necessarily helped me getting into the program or not. What it did for me particularly, it helped me understand what I wanted. And so just whether you've had that work experience or not, having your vision clear and going to the program with that, it could be you're coming straight from undergrad with that vision, or it could be that you've had some experience that's brought you to that vision. As long as you know why you're going, I don't think that there's necessarily a competitive advantage in one way or the other.
Yeah, agree. I don't think it's necessary. I had, of course, some internships, that I had done in the summers through my college years. One was in human resources, which is pretty aligned to what we study in MAPP, of course. And before that, I think one of my internships was actually also Morgan Stanley. I know Mel and I connected on this, but it was like financial analyst role. That was before I knew, where I was going. So in my essay, I had briefly spoken upon that. I had some experience in that. I knew it wasn't for me. And I pivoted and I said, this is why I want to do this instead. So I think internship experience or work experience is totally fine to have coming in, but not required.
Yeah. So just like emphasize your life experience. Like, what have you learned about yourself and the world that is bringing you to this point? Like, that's really what it's about right there.
Wonderful. Well, we are at an hour here for our event today. Mel and Lauren, thank you so much for coming back to MAPP virtually and sharing a little bit more. It's on your take on the program and your experience. To all the students that are joining us today, I will send a follow-up email with some more information. You can feel free to connect with any of us on LinkedIn. We're all active. If you'd like to reach out to any of us, you are welcome to do that. Our priority deadline, I can't believe we're already end of year, but it's coming up in a little less than a month. So if you do have any questions or would like to meet to talk about your application, please reach out before the holidays so we can make sure you're all taken care of. But with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful Friday. Mel and Lauren, thanks again and have a wonderful weekend. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Have a good one, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.